So our next presenter is Deana Around Him. She is a proud member of the Cherokee Nation of Oklahoma. After graduating with her bachelor's from Brown University, she went on to teach high school science for 2 years on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation with Teach for America. She later earned her Master of Science with a concentration in maternal and child health from Harvard University and was recently awarded her doctorate through the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. She also served as an IRB Fellow with the National Institutes of Health. Dr. Around Him hopes to bridge research with practice to enhance the family planning and pre-postnatal experiences of American Indian families. Please welcome her. Thank you. See right there. Okay. Hey, get up there. Hi, good. Oh. There we go. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Deana Around Him, and for the last few months, I have served as an Institutional Review Board, or IRB intern, in the Department of Bioethics at the NIH Clinical Center. As a part of my program, I had the opportunity to participate in the planning process for this symposium, and that means that I'm extremely delighted to see all of you here today engaged in really thoughtful discussion and learning about genetics research in Indian country. I hope that what I have to offer will contribute to our overarching goal of presenting a spectrum of perspectives on genetic research. And I'll discuss my own journey to a research career in public health, and in reflecting on my path, highlight areas I think are important for engaging both Native students and investigators in the field of genetics research. So I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, which is located in the northeastern corner of Oklahoma, and I grew up about an hour north of Tulsa, Oklahoma, in a small town on the Kansas side of the border called Caney. And science was always one of my favorite subjects. Growing up, I have a distinct memory of learning about the breaking news of Dolly, the cloned sheep, in my freshman science class. And we had to debate the pros and cons of cloning and genetic research as part of that class. And it was the first time that I had really connected basic lab science with broader social and ethical issues in the world, but that conversation didn't happen in a cultural context. But I went on to take all the science classes that I could at my high school and became interested in a career in medicine. Just before my junior year, I participated in the National Youth Leadership Forum on Medicine and spent 2 weeks on the East Coast learning about careers in medicine. And my eyes were really opened to many new opportunities, and I was introduced to Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island. Never in my wildest dreams would I have imagined that I would have ended up at an Ivy League college, but once I was there, my path to a career in medicine was altered by three sort of experiences at Brown. First, although my high school did its best to provide an education to students, I quickly learned that I was grossly underprepared for pre-med science classes. Second, I was struck by the differences between my own upbringing and that of my oftentimes very wealthy classmates at Brown. And third, despite being from very different tribes from across the country, I bonded with the other Native American students at Brown, and we bonded over shared family experiences and hardships, and also through our cultural values. So together, these three experiences helped me discover the community health concentration and shifted my career goals from becoming a medical doctor to focusing on health and social disparities through a career in public health. As I wrapped up my 4 years at Brown, I was eager to transition from writing papers about helping Native communities to actually doing it. And I applied to the Teach for America program as part of the first cohort of teachers placed in South Dakota. I taught high school science at Little Wound School on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, And during my 2 years at Little Wound, I often dipped into my own pocket to purchase lab supplies, and I functioned on just a few hours of sleep each night to come up with engaging lessons for the many courses that I taught, including physical science, physics, chemistry, microbiology, and human anatomy and physiology. As many of you may be aware, many families on Pine Ridge are faced with extreme poverty, and for some of my students, situations at home made it difficult to focus on learning science in my classroom. But my students who were most successful, I observed, were those who had strong family connections and connections to their cultural values and traditions. So seeing this sort of dichotomy between students who succeeded and those who were less successful encouraged me to think about the importance of early life experiences for children. And I decided to further focus my career on maternal and child health through a Master of Science program at the Harvard School of Public Health. At Harvard, I researched the social determinants of infant mortality among Northern Plains tribal communities, and also learned how important it is for Native researchers to pursue doctoral degrees in order to really shape the research agenda in Indian country. So I applied to doctoral programs, and through the Doctor of Public Health program at Johns Hopkins, I had the opportunity to work on 3 projects that helped me focus on multi-level aspects of health. So the first project at sort of the macro or the micro level was the Fetus to 5 study, and this was a study based in East Baltimore with a non-native population, but I had the opportunity to return to some of my basic science roots and interest as we examined the physiological markers of stress, such as salivary cortisol levels, to better understand the impact of early life stressors on the social, emotional, and cognitive development of children at age 5. At sort of an interpersonal level and relational level, my dissertation work research examined depressive and anxiety symptoms in pregnancy and their associations with maternal characteristics and birth outcomes in a sample of American Indian and white women from the Northern Plains. And at the macro level, the First Nations Regional Health Survey evaluation allowed me to see how First Nations principles of ethical research, including ownership, control, access, and possession of data, shaped the implementation of a large-scale on-reserve health survey. So I want to say a little bit more about my dissertation work, which was a secondary analysis of data from the Safe Passage study, which is an ongoing investigation of the role of prenatal alcohol exposure in the risk of SIDS, stillbirth, and other adverse pregnancy outcomes. I first became involved with this project during my master's program at Harvard, and through the mentorship of the Safe Passage Study's Northern Plains primary investigator, Dr. Amy Elliott, I've had the chance to watch the research partnerships and capacity in the Northern Plains strengthen in a way that has led me to think about continuing to build on my research there. And as I began to think about transitioning from being a doctoral student to a new investigator, I engaged in conversations with the National Congress of American Indians Policy Research Center about ways to shape my research to meet both the needs of tribal communities and the current themes in funding announcements. And this is something that all researchers have to think about doing. A translational diabetes project was just starting at NCAI, and I spoke with the PRC about how to tailor my interests in mental health and pregnancy outcomes to research questions that incorporate aspects of diabetes prevention. I think this is, again, something that all researchers have to learn to do in order to meet the needs of our current funding environment and also meet the needs of the community interests as well as our own interests as researchers. So extending my research to diabetes prevention didn't really seem like that great of a leap for me because I could make clear connections between mental health and chronic disease and the importance of prevention early in life, especially during the prenatal period for both mothers and their infants. But it was when Dr. Villegas encouraged me to apply for the IRB internship at NIH that I had to take a step back and pause. Obviously, the 3 projects that I've listed here have various aspects of research regulations and aspects of ethics integrated within them. But the NIH program that I participated in was actually supervised by 2 great researchers who are here today, who are housed within NHGRI, or the National Human Genome Research Institute. And the fact that it was it was sort of housed within that institute made me hesitate a little bit to apply, because I thought this is a whole new research direction to think about adding on to my current interests, and I didn't really know where that would take me. There are special considerations, ethical considerations when you're talking about working with mothers and children, but also all of the issues that we've talked about today in terms of researchers who work with Native communities and the cultural values and considerations that have to be taken into account when you're thinking about genetics research. So extending my research in the social determinants of maternal and child health to diabetes made sense to me, but the thought of getting involved with genetics research just kind of made me pause a little bit. So with a second round of nudging from the PRC and from Malia, I finally decided to apply and looked forward to learning more about the research regulatory process and IRBs at NIH. And once I was at NIH and immersed in the world of NHGRI, I learned about the many advances that have happened in genetics research since I first began to think about that in my freshman high school science class. I learned about amazing clinical trials on the NIH campus that are investigating the role of genetics in ADHD, lung cancer, and diabetes. Heard about breaking news and discoveries from these studies that use cutting-edge technology to diagnose previously unknown diseases in patients. And I finally had the space to explore some of the many journal articles in the field of genetics research as well. I also had the chance to look at the literature and resources coming out in Indian country about genetic research. And I had never really had the opportunity to explore this literature as I was so focused on my doctoral dissertation work. Some of the papers that I've listed up here are by some of our speakers today, and so it was really great to have a chance to sit down and read them. And as I explored the literature on genetic research, both from NIH and from Indian country, I realized two things: that genetic research and technology is rapidly advancing, and while myself and many tribal communities are just sort of beginning to think about engaging in this research, it's critically important to be knowledgeable and engaged in conversations about genetic research so that when the time comes, the decision to participate is a choice that we can make for ourselves rather than having it be made for us because we're so far behind the times that we don't even have a chance to participate. So in closing, I just want to highlight three areas where I've sort of, in reflecting my own path, thought about ways to engage both Native students and established investigators in genetics research and the conversations around genetics research. So for school-aged youth, it's critical that teachers have access to high-quality educational resources and curriculum so that they can spark an interest in their students, like I had happen for me in my high school science classes. But in order for this to happen, in particular for our Native communities, I think that it may take some extra work. So there are some great resources that have developed that have curriculums and lesson plans, et cetera. But for really dedicated Native teachers and those working in Native communities, it's going to take some work for us to come up with lessons and curriculums that really respect the knowledge that we have in our communities, the scientific knowledge that we have, and bridge that with the science knowledge that we have from places like NIH and other sources. The second piece that I wanted to talk about was for college students, and I see Mr. Cliff Pujri in the audience from HHMI. So while I was at NIH, I had the opportunity to visit HHMI, and for my own journey, I think that I became a little bit turned off by the sciences a little bit based on my experience in the college classroom and the science classes that I took at Brown. And I think with a little bit more support and hands-on opportunities, my path may have taken a different turn. I'm very happy about where I'm at today, but I think that for a lot of students, integrating really hands-on learning experiences in a supportive environment is important, and I think it would be important for our tribal colleges to think about programs like the Science Education Alliance at HHMI that provide an opportunity for students to discover mycobacteriophages, name them, and even in some cases publish on them before they graduate from college. And finally, for established investigators, short-term programs such as the GINA or the Genetic Education for Native American workshops, which I think was just offered as a pre-conference session at the Native Research Network annual meeting, are really important. So for myself, I felt like I was an established researcher or sort of establishing my own line of research, and I didn't want to veer off that path too much as I defined my research career. But it's really important to create those small learning opportunities so that people who don't really see genetic research in their future can learn enough about it to say, okay, if a community partners with me in the future and is interested in doing this work, I have enough knowledge to help them navigate those waters a little bit, or connect to the right people that can do that good research with them. And also just to know enough about the field of genetic research and what's happening in the advances in technology today, so that should they decide to do some of that or integrate some of that work into their own research agenda in the future, they have the places to go and the resources to go to do it. So I'd just like to say, Wado, thank you for listening, and I look forward to having a good discussion with you all. Thanks.